right, continuing section 8.2, part 2, we've talked about a circle, a cardioid, a limacon. Next thing we're going to talk about is a rose. So if you look at these general equations right here, a rose is R equals A cosine n theta. That n is actually supposed to be there. Or A equals sine n theta. That's not n squared right there, so just be careful right there. Now, it depends on what n actually is right here. If n is odd, like an odd number, 3, 5, 7, 9, you're just going to have that number of petals. So if it's 3, you'll have 3 petals. 5, 5 petals. If n is even, those number of petals actually get doubled. So if n is 2, 2 times 2 gives me 4 petals. Now, if n happens to be 4, 4 times 2, then you got 8 petals going on within your problem. So this is the example we're going to look at right here. R equals 8 sine 3 theta. Now, notice that my n happens to be odd, so we're just going to have 3 petals in this particular problem. So here goes number 4. I've already written the name right here, which is a rose, and I've already got my equation right here, which is R equals 8 sine 3 theta. So next thing I'm going to do is go to my calculator. I'm going to go 2y equals and type this equation in. Now, make sure your table set is at 0, you're incrementing by 15s, you both into autos for your independent and your dependent variables, and when you go to y equals, you should be able to type this in right here. So clear out what you had before, and we've got 8 sine of 3 theta. Now when I go to my table, all of my values are going to pop up. So I'm starting off at 0 right here. So based off of this, I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, just like always. So at 0, we've got 0. At 15, we've got 5.7. At 30, we're at 8. At 45, we've got 5.7. At 60, we're back to 0. So you see some symmetry going on here. At 75, now we're in the negatives, negative 5.7. At 90, we're at negative 8. So I'm going to scroll up to my next number, which is 105. At 105, I've got negative 5.7. At 120, we've got 0. At 135, we've got positive 5.7. At 150, we've got 8. At 165, we've got positive 5.7. And at 180, we're back to 0. So next one I'm starting with is 195. 195 is negative 5.7. 210 is negative 8. 225 is negative 5.7 again. 240, I'm back to 0. 255 is 5.7. 270 is 8. All right, let's do this last quadrant. We're starting at 285, so 285 is 5.7. 300 is 0. 315 is negative 5.7. 330 is negative 8. 345 is negative 5.7. And 360, I'm back to 0. All right, so let's take each of these coordinate points and let's plot them on our polar axis to see what we get. All right, so we got 0 first. So 0, 0, that's sitting me at the origin. At 15 degrees, we're going to go out to 5.7. So counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.7, very close to 6 at 15 degrees. At 30, we're going all the way to 8. Remember, 8 was all the way out there on the end right there. At 45 degrees, we're at 5.7, so we're just going to kind of match that right here, 5.7. And then at 60, we're back to 0. So there's 1 petal that we've got right there already. All right, now we're getting to the negatives right here. 75 degrees is negative 5.7, so across from 75 is 255. So at 255, I'm going to go out to 5.7. All right, at 90, I'm at negative 8, so I can't go to 8 on 90. I got to flip it straight across to that 270 and go out to 8 there. At 105, I'm at 5.7. I can't stay at 105, so I got to flip it across to 285 and go to that 5.7 as well. Next one I've got is 120. I'm back at 0. So you can see 1 petal, 2 petals. Now let's get that other petal. At 135 degrees, I'm at 5.7. So at 135, I can just go out there and I can stay. At 150, I'm out at 8. And at 165, I'm at 5.7. All right, now, let's look at 180. At 180, I'm back to 0. So it attaches right here. Now, 195 is negative 5.7. Look what happens here. Across from 195, I got to flip it to 15 is 5.7, but I already got that graphed. At 210, I'm at negative 8, but across from 210 was that 30. So you can kind of see the second part of the graph just starts repeating itself. So if I'm going to draw this, I don't draw straight lines. You got to curve it as you go. You get these petals within your graph right here. So this right here happens to be 3 petals. Remember, we should have 3 petals because we said on this graph n was negative since n is odd. Since n is odd, that's the number of petals that you have within this problem. Now, let me show you some examples of some other roses with a different number of petals. So here's an example of a rose. If you can see here, you've got 8 petals. So in here happened to be even. Here's another example. Check this over upside down. Here's another example of a rose. This one also has 8 petals. Very colorful. Another example of a rose. This kind of turned sideways. So there's my rose. This one has 4 petals. So in this problem, n equal 2. Here's another picture of a rose. Now this is odd, very similar to the one that we did right here. Here's another example of a rose, very similar to the one we did with 3 petals. So the propeller right here is the only thing that represents that rose. Here's another picture of a rose with several petals, as you can see. Another picture of a rose. Now this rose had 5 petals. These right here are just extra details within this problem. So the blue and the purple is the rose within that problem. And here's another example. Turn this the other way. Here's another example of a rose right here. And this one right here had 8 petals involved in this. Okay? And here's the petals right here if you can see me. Those are the petals within there, and everything else was just detail added to the problem. So there's pictures of roses.